main feature of the evening, my pleasure to introduce, or present to you rather, Chris Worick. Chris is serving as his third term as Vice President of the Lumpkin County Historical Society, and he served for 2 years as our program chairperson. He's the author of 2 books, James Beauclerk and the Free Gem Mind, and his most recent book, Acting Like Crazy Men. Does have copies of those here tonight. If you'd like to look at them or purchase a copy, Chris will be glad to talk with you about that. He led the response to Worick, Georgia, when they began to publicize that they were the site of the first gold rush. And by examining newspapers far and wide, from Augusta to Hall County and around, he proved we were first. So we thank Chris for leading that battle against Worick. He's an avid researcher on gold mining, and the history of our area. He has led a course at the North Georgia College and State University Center for Continued Education on gold mining, and he has also presented at the Gold Museum in their new program, the Gold Museum After Dark. He's a docent at the old jail every time we open the doors down there. He dressed up as an 1800s gold miner and spoke at the Heritage Days program we had a couple of years ago. Our County Commissioner, John Raber, writes a column for the Nugget. Somebody asked a question about gold mining, and he answered by saying, I referred this to Chris Worick, our local historian expert on this subject, for the answer. So tonight he's going to tell us where we can find gold around Lumpkin County, perhaps in our own backyard. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Worick.
I just wish I could get paid for all those things I've done. This was actually a great challenge for me to work on this project, because no one had ever done it before that I know of as far as a presentation for the Historical Society. And it was also a culmination. In the article that I'm sure a lot of you read from the newspaper, it said, well, you know, there's a good chance maybe this Gold Diggers Road or maybe some gold mines reside on your property. For the past 5 years, I've been here in Dahlonega for 10 years now, and I was here with the Army. My last duty assignment was with the ROTC program at the college. And being from Michigan, I didn't miss the Michigan winters, so we decided to stay down here in the sunny old South, where it was a little bit warmer. And once I retired, I always had an avid interest in history, so I decided to get interested in looking into the gold mining history of this area, because like most people from across the country, you know, everybody has always been taught in school that California was where the first gold rush was. You know, I've never heard that Georgia had any gold, so I was very curious about this. So once I started delving into this, I started working on a project to try to identify how many actual gold mines had ever existed in Lumpkin County, because I would find different documents and maps and so on, but depending on what period in history we were looking at, you might only have a certain snapshot of what existed at that time, and sometimes they wouldn't be reflected later on. So my goal that I was trying to do was try to incorporate every gold mine that ever existed from 1829 through the end when World War II started in 1941. And what you see up here that you'll be free to look at once we get done with the presentation is every gold mine that I've ever been able to catalog by land lot on a current map that shows the current roads and the original land lots overlaid onto that, so that way you can tell if that's on your property. The one thing to keep in mind is that every little pink label that has a name will represent a gold mine. However, some of the gold mining properties might have incorporated more than one of the 40-acre land lots, so I tried to put it as close as possible to the center of that property. So if you're really serious and you think that there might be a gold mine close to or on your property, I would recommend you to go look and research in the deed records in the courthouse, because that will actually tell you with mineral rights and gold mines and so on, they're going back to the original county documents from 1833 if there might be a gold mine there. Along with maps. So what was a challenge for me was to be able to identify the Gold Diggers Road, and that was the last thing I was able to add on to this map that I had been missing, because in the course of my research the last couple of weeks doing this, there is not a lot that was actually written about the road. The big question is, when did it actually start, how did it start, and so on. I guess the most logical answer is it probably started off as either a game trail or probably a hunting type trail for the Cherokees, since it did start in the Cherokee Nation before the intruders came in looking for gold. And so what we had to do was go back to the year of 1829. Okay, Benjamin Parks' account, which everybody, if you've ever heard about his story about finding gold, apparently he said he found gold, or stumbled upon what he thought was gold on his birthday in October of 1828, so almost a year before the most documented account of gold being found in Georgia. So why didn't he let somebody know that he found gold prior to this? Hard to say. Maybe he was keeping that a secret until he was sure that there was more to be found, if it actually was gold. I don't know. But a lot has happened in the last 183 years that would change the gold digger's route, and that was a challenge for me, was to actually find out how much documentation was out there and if there's any part of the road which still exists, which I was glad to say there was, that I was able to find. This is a copy of from the Georgia Journal in Milledgeville, and this was also printed in other newspapers, not in Georgia, but also in other parts of the country. But this was the first announcement of gold which had been found in Habersham County on about the 22nd of July in 1829. Okay, and this was reported in August 1st. And they said 2 gold mines had been discovered in the county. Now everybody knows that the geography, White County is where Habersham County line used to be at that time, because there was no White County until 1857, and then Lumpkin County of 1833. So the first documented account of gold was actually in Habersham County. It wasn't by Benjamin Parks. But in an interview that Benjamin Parks gave to the Atlanta newspaper in 1894 while he was still alive, he was quoted as saying, "It seemed that within a few days as if the whole world must have heard of it. For men came from every state I had ever heard of. They came on foot, on horseback, and in wagons, acted more like crazy men than anything else." And that's a direct quote from Mr. Benjamin Parks. Now later I was able to find that Benjamin Parks was credited in different newspaper accounts, even as early as 1870, if not earlier, as being the one that found gold, or was credited with finding gold in this county, not necessarily just in Georgia, but at least in this county. Okay, so the whole thing about who actually found gold first in Georgia might still be in dispute, although a lot of people will still say it's Benjamin Parks, and he's kind of kept it a secret. The first mention that we see about the gold, and this is interesting because Larry had talked about the Worick gold rush. This is a copy or portion of the 1830 map of Georgia, which was drawn by Carlton Wellborn and Orange Green. And this is a very large map, so what I had to do was just kind of show you the area that was of interest to us right here. And as you'll notice, the boundary with the Cherokee Nation, there's nothing filled in yet, and there's a reason for that. However, this map, right down here, you can't really see it too well unless you get up really close to it, does say Gold Region. Now, that's part of Carroll County right there. And that was, at that time, the southern end of the gold region. And this is what one of the pieces of evidence that when the Worick claim came up that they were using was that, well, it's just a gold region in Carroll County, but no other place. Well, the reason that nothing else had been filled in here, because they did know that gold had been found by this time in 1830 in Habersham and Hall County, was that the Cherokee Nation, there was already people going in there. Intruders were always going in there looking for gold. But in a newspaper article, it specifically said by Mr. Green, one of the authors of the map, that the reason that the Cherokee Nation had not been filled in yet was because that they anticipate that this will eventually become part of the state of Georgia, and then when that time comes, we're leaving this blank so that way we can fill in that portion with the appropriate districts and land lots and so on there. So they did know gold was in there, just weren't going to be able to fill this in at this time because it wasn't completed, or the whole extent of the gold region wasn't known by this time. And here's a blow-up of it. Of interest, you'll notice this little star I had in here. Well, a common mistake that a lot of people read about the history they might misunderstand is that Benjamin Parks, when he did find gold, which is where the Calhoun gold mine marker is located at, that's actually on land lot 164, which originally was in Hall County because it was on this side of the Chestatee. The Chestatee was the boundary between the state of Georgia at that time and the Cherokee Nation. So when Benjamin Parks did find gold, it was not across the river yet. So had he found gold in the Cherokee Nation, that might have been the actual spark that started people going across the river. However, there is no known exact person or date that specifically says when gold was first found in the Cherokee Nation. What we do know from newspaper accounts is that they all basically reflect that by about the winter of 1829 to 1830, sometime between December to February, there's newspaper accounts that do specifically say there's between 600 to 900 people now in the Cherokee Nation that are looking for gold. So somewhere in that time frame is when somebody got brave enough to cross the river and go start poking around on the other side of the Chestatee in the Cherokee Nation and came up with gold. And then that started this floodgates opening up right there. This was interesting because this was the only advertisement that I had found in searching a lot of these old newspapers that specifically by name does say the Gold Diggers Road. There was nothing even in Kane's History of Lumpkin County. I could find no mention of Gold Diggers Road. And do you know anything if he mentioned it in there? So there's no real mention of the road itself. He'll talk about intruders, gold diggers, and so on in the nation, but there's nothing that actually says which road or by name. So I thought it was interesting that he's describing where his house of entertainment, Mr. Dodd, is building at the Burnt Stand, which is in the Cherokee country, and it specifically says where it's at in the land lots right there. But this is from 1832, just before Lumpkin County is being established right there. This was a copy of the Golden Land Map advertised by Orange Green. Now, if you recall, Mr. Green also did the map in 1830 with Carlton Wellborn, because he was the state surveyor at this time. In 1832, I believe Mr. Green had succeeded him in becoming the state surveyor, so he came up with a new land lot map that has, after the Cherokee Lottery of 1832, now this one shows all the new districts and land lots included in this map. And this is a portion of it. This is the whole first district, and obviously it's a very large map, so we'll have to kind of zoom in a little bit. This is the 12th district, so this is basically the district right here where between Hall County, Habersham, and the Chestatee River right there. We zoom in a little bit closer. To show you the significance of the Gold Diggers Road on this map, I had to put this in red because it blended in with the map and you wouldn't be able to see it very well. But it's very interesting because this is the only road that really appears on any of these maps. The Unicoi Road, which is very popular from the middle, about 1815, I believe. 1810 is when it was started. I found no older maps that even reflected the Unicoi Road, which is a nice way that people were getting back and forth up to Tennessee and trading and so on there. That wasn't even reflected in any maps. So to have something man-made reflected on a map shows you how much importance, in this case, the Gold Diggers Road was. Basically, it kind of runs off right here, but this is where the Chestatee Creek and the Chestatee River meet, and then it crosses into the Cherokee Nation, and then it will start making this loop and come down here, and you'll notice it splits at several points. This place right here is termed Uhula Ford, and this is actually, by today's map, it's north of the Highway 52 or Bearden's Bridge across the river. And then it kind of, where it splits at right here in this area, this is where Dahlonega will end up being. And then down here where the roads kind of meet back again and join back up and then head south, this is over towards Cane Creek, heading towards where Auraria will be located. And then this other road, this is not the actual Gold Diggers Road. The actual Gold Diggers Road is running right here. This road that connects with it comes up from Habersham County. So basically we're looking at, multiple crossing points that people are figuring out, hey, we need to get into the Cherokee Nation and figure this out where the gold is at. So it shows you how many, numbers, thousands of people are coming in here and figuring out ways they can cross the river. In some places, not getting their feet wet to go look for gold. And this is what it looks like by today's, from a satellite type map from the air. This is the Chestatee Creek, and here's the Chestatee River where they meet at. And you can see also the current roads up there. But this is the crossing point for the Gold Diggers Road, where they would have been coming into the nation at that time. And a lot of it obviously would make common sense that they would be following the path of least resistance, because if you're coming with wagons and loaded with supplies and everything, you're not going to take the route that's going to be going over hill and dale like that. You can try to find the smoothest route possible. So I would imagine that their route would follow the easiest terrain in order to get to the gold mining areas. And this is the south portion. I've added in Leathers Ford or Newbridge right there, and then this area right here, this is where Auraria will come up at on land line 664. At this time when I drew the map, obviously, this is just the land lots and then the Gold Diggers Road. There is no cities established at this point yet. There's no Auraria, Knucklesville, There's nothing else on the maps yet, so it's just showing these roads right there, which I thought was really significant. But the important thing was showing the actual land lots, which helped me in being able to transcribe it onto this new map right there, because the land lots haven't changed. So that was a really big plus to be able to plug that in and show how the roads today, actually, some of the old Gold Diggers Road actually goes parallel with the same roads today, or even some places it was just these hard roads that we have right now is actually part of the Gold Diggers Road. It was just expanded over time. This is the southern crossing point that would come into the channel. Obviously, this area right here would have been Hall County on the way going over towards Gainesville, and then this is Leathers Ford as it appears from the air today. If you've ever been down there, this is actually most of the time underwater now because it's part of Lake Lanier. But with the droughts we've had for the last couple of years, it's actually pretty low right now, and you can actually walk out there and you can see Leathers Ford from the other side. Here's a better close-up of it. And you can see even today, this is a natural fording point. Originally, this area right here where Leathers Ford was at, it was started by a man named Joel Leathers in the late 1820s, and it grew into a small community. Apparently they had a sawmill, they did have some mining operations going on down there, and so there was at least about 20 to 50 persons at any given time in this area living right there. But apparently Mr. Leathers or someone, or Ligdon, had established a drawbridge or some type of toll bridge right there for people to cross, so they wouldn't have to get their feet wet. So when the river was low, they wouldn't have to worry about having a problem crossing the river right there. And then this would have been part of the Cherokee Nation, leading into where Rary was at in the gold mining areas. Now, this is an interesting thing because a lot of people don't know this, but this will be known as the Battle of Leathers Ford. And what had happened was, in the first part of January of 1831, the governor had issued a proclamation making it illegal for any white persons or intruders going into the Cherokee Nation to dig for gold at this time. So what they did was they had regularly, initially, federal troops had been called in to, at the Cherokees' request, to get these people out of there because they're basically trespassing, into the Cherokee sovereign nation. And so few troops and so many gold diggers, they can only do so much. Well, later on, the governor said, well, wait a second, we didn't call for federal troops. This is a Georgia problem. We'll take care of this. So they replaced the federal troops with state militia to go in here. So in this case, what happened was they made it illegal for people to be mining for gold in the Cherokee Nation. Not that they're going to listen, of course. So the militia was charged with going in there and policing the gold mining areas. They said that they captured about 11 gold diggers that were in violation of the governor's order and were coming back to Leathers Ford. In the process, some of these gold diggers' friends had heard they had gotten captured and were trying to effect their release. So what they did was they put up some type of obstacles and ways to try to slow down the guard that was bringing these guys back, because they're going to take them back across Leathers Ford up to Gainesville to put them in jail, charging them with illegal gold mining in the Cherokee Nation. Well, once the militia found these obstacles and everything, they didn't have a problem getting around them. They just avoided them, crossed the river, and they're heading back on the far side into Hall County. Well, apparently, the prisoners at the lead of the column with the militia, and Colonel Nelson, who was at the head, one of the troops from the rear of the column comes up and says, hey, we're being attacked by about 50 or 60 of these other gold miners at the rear of the column there. And they said these guys were throwing everything but muskets at them, rocks and sticks and all kinds of stuff. So they actually had to charge these guys with bayonets in order to get them to go back. And they said one of these guys, who they described as being the vile of the vilest, was actually bayoneted. And at first they thought it was a mortal wound, but apparently it wasn't that, the case. But it just goes to show you that gold mining got to be a little bit, serious kind of incident right there with these guys getting charged with this and then their friends trying to get them released. So that was the Battle of Leathers Ford. This is another gold map by 1832, which was written or drawn up by John Bethune. This one's a little bit more colorful. I like this one. The names of the counties were added in later, hand drawn in, where it says Lumpkin and Union and so on there. But if you'll notice, as we get down here into Lumpkin County, go a little bit closer right there, the Gold Diggers Road is clearly written in here, and it goes down to Leathers Ford, and then this road right here goes down into what would be Forsyth County. But you also see written up sideways, it says Gold Region. So by 1832, they know that, okay, well, this is part of the Lumpkin County, and then we got the Gold Region right here. And you even got a couple places right here where it says Underwood's Gold Mine, Rich Gold Mine, here's Ligdon's Mill, and then Leathers Ford. So we are starting to get some more man-made place names on the map right here as we're getting into later on, as the people are starting to move into the area right there. But these were the only two maps that I have ever found that actually have the Gold Diggers Road specifically written in there and mentioned by name on them. And I would have to also mention that I thought it was interesting because UGA, their rare map collection at the Harvard Library, is where I got a lot of this information from, because they have a wonderful repository of old maps, and they're available online too. So if you just were to go online, type in Harvard Rare Map Collection, you can just have a selection about what you're looking for, and you can pull these up there. It's just wonderful to go play around with these things and see what you can find. Big question: what remains of the Gold Diggers Road today? Well, using the map, and I had to overlay that and trace it onto the new map and see, where the roads went to, I was able to actually go out there and find some of the original roadbed. Now, like I said earlier, 183 years changes a lot of things, so I was not too excited about the prospect of looking for something, because I didn't think that I would find too much that still might be out there in the woods. But I was pleasantly surprised and did find a couple spots where there is part of the old roadbed, overgrown obviously, but you can see that this one, it's on the side of the hill. It goes back down where it's flat again, but this is basically on the opposite side of the road from where the Wagon Wheel restaurant is located at. So if you have the Wagon Wheel standing there looking across the road onto the side of the bridge over there, this is part of the Gold Diggers Road that's up there. This one's adjacent to Happy Hollow Road. This one, it goes down. It's almost like a switchback, because it'll go down to the bottom of the hill and then kind of cut back. So it goes up there, follows the side of the hill, and then runs up towards town. And you can actually see it is, fairly matted down right there. And no telling how long that they had used this for, because obviously even after the gold diggers weren't using it because the county had gotten established and so on, I'm sure these established roads just kind of expanded and were fairly, regularly well-traveled trails for a long period of time. This one's kind of hard to see because this is right across from the high school. There's a little road right there where it says Yahoo Creek Cabins, if you're familiar with that. The next time you're down there, you see that sign, you see that road running right through there? You can't really see these yellow lines I tried to add in there, but it runs straight through there and it kind of cuts back out onto North Grove Street right there. Here's another portion of it. See, it kind of goes through the underbrush there. And again, kind of matted down. The best one that I found, that you can clearly see it actually crosses the road, is on Chinkapin Trail. This is the actual road right now, but the roadbed from the Gold Diggers Road runs in this direction across the road there, and you can see it's clearly a sunken type of road right there. And I had a lady named Mrs. Gilreath that called me after I'd gone out there, and she called Robbie from the Historical Society to make sure I wasn't some kind of salesman or some kind of weirdo on the way around. Because I went there poking around one day, looking at the roadbed, going knocking on people's doors. So she wanted to make sure that I was who I said I was. So kind of alleviate her fears. This one is looking towards the direction where Yahoo Creek will be at, and this is where the roadbed, you can clearly see it, sunk down right there, but that is part of the old Gold Diggers Trail. And obviously it's wide enough that you could have had a wagon, to be able to fit through this if you're coming that way. And this is a little bit more of an expanded view. You can see it there. And this is the most, I guess, recognizable feature of it, is the historical marker, which is located right there just on where Highway 19 and the Morrison Moore extension kind of meet right there. And that's where it would have crossed at one point. And does anyone have any questions? That's the end of the presentation. All right. As I mentioned, if you're interested to come up here and see if you've got a gold mine in your own backyard, feel free to come here and take a look at that map right there. And good. Thank you for your coming.
Thank you, Chris. He'll be hanging around after the meeting's over so that you can talk to him personally about your own backyard and whether or not it falls in the Gold Diggers Road. There is a map up here you may want to look at and see if you can identify where you are. Remember, however, if you go looking for gold, this is not 1832, and the property now belongs to somebody else. So don't go wandering up somebody's driveway or across somebody's backyard with your pick and shovel, because you're liable to get some buckshot to greet you as you loop. Next month, Sally Sorahan is coordinating our program. And Sally or Ann or Chris will tell us what that program is going to be. Which one of you will do that?
I'll tell you.
Chris, all right?
Wayne Knuckles will be giving our March program, and it will be basically, if you missed the opportunity to hear me speak about W.B. Townsend, your first editor of the Delania Nugget, you're in for a treat because he has the life and times of W.B. Townsend that he'll be talking about next month. So our own editor of the Nugget. So you have something to say to Wayne, here's your opportunity. You know what's up in the Nugget? And one thing I forgot to mention also, in reference to the map right here, I donated the exact copy of this map to the library. So the library, in their reference room, the Madeline K. Anthony room, they have other maps that I used to help construct this one. But they do have a copy of this map also. So if you don't get an opportunity to see this one tonight, the library has one. Just go see Angela, and she'll be glad to pull it out for you.
Second Thursday night in March, 7 o'clock, right here in the community house. You're in for a wonderful treat as our current editor of the Delania Nugget tells us about the legendary editor, B.F. Townsend. Any other announcements before we go? Thank you again, Manny, for the video tonight. And do stand around and talk a little bit, shake hands with our visitors, let them know that we're so glad to have them. And if you got a little energy, you can help us put away the chairs. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.